Hey there folks, Wrel here. Today I thought we'd go over the recent knife changes that hit live servers on September 7. If you've been around for a while, you're probably aware that using wielded melee was a pretty terrible experience. The best chance you had to score knife kills was when the enemy was either moving toward you directly or standing stationary. Recent changes to knives have made the experience a bit better, though getting used to the new timing will definitely take some time. And full disclosure, there is likely some work yet to be done to streamline the experience further. In the background, you'll see some gameplay using knives post-adjustment, and I'll break down exactly what has changed. For those of you who don't know, your middle mouse button is the default quick melee attack, which is the knife swing that you do when you aren't actively wielding a knife, and I have mine bound to the T key. If you hold down your quick melee button, you'll begin wielding your knife, and this is not a good way to quickly access your wielded melee. You can also press the dash key to begin wielding your knife as well, but that is also not a good way to quickly access it. I have my wielded melee bound to the N key, which I can hit pretty quickly with my thumb. Currently, there are two types of knives in the game. You have your default knives and your power knives. Any knife that cannot be activated for the purpose of this commentary, we're going to be calling a default knife. That's your default knife, and that's the holiday knives, that's the anniversary edition knives, that's the special knives you'll find elsewhere. Power knives are your Lumen Edge for VS, your Carver for NC, and your Ripper for TR. All of those you can hit B to activate or deactivate their harder hitting firing mode. But if you want a better, albeit now outdated, breakdown of how those knives work, go ahead and take a look at the older power knife guide that I have linked in the video description. That said, the default quick melee stayed the same as it always has been. It's a solid finishing attack and it swings in an arc. Power knives, however, used to use a bullet system for their quick melee attack, in that you'd have to have precision aim, it'd have a delay, and then it would do damage if your crosshair was still on the target. That's since been changed to the same swiping melee that the default knives use, but again, that's only your quick attack. The quick attack damage for both knives is the same at 500, but the power knife's quick melee has a slower recovery time than the default knife's quick melee, and in return, you get a weapon capable of a one-shot melee kill when it's activated. That's always kind of been the trade-off: worse quick melee attack for a powerful wielded melee attack, but that trade-off for the quick melee was practically unusable, which made it so that players couldn't equip the weapon with a clear conscience unless they were running Stalker Infiltrator, and in that case you're not even using the quick melee attack since you're basically using your knife as your primary. Anyway, so both knife quick melees are now much closer together in terms of effectiveness. For wielded melee attacks, there were a variety of changes that increase the responsiveness and hopefully reduce frustration. Wielded melee attacks, unlike quick melee, use the same bullet system that we mentioned earlier, so your crosshair needs to be on the target's hitbox instead of being able to enjoy that nice swipe from a quick melee attack. For default knives, the collision radius of that invisible bullet is doubled from 0.1 to 0.2, and what that means is that you now have a little bit more leniency when it comes to landing a hit on a target. If you increase the collision size too much, as has been done in the past, you run into issues with hitting walls next to you instead of the target that's in front of you, and this increase is actually pretty modest, so I don't think that we'll run into a problem there. Power knife wielded melee does not get this buff, so it does require slightly more precision. Again, that's one of the trade-offs of having a one-shot kill knife. Projectile lifespans for both the default and power knives were increased from 0.1 to 0.12 seconds, and what that means is that the projectile lives just a little bit longer, which gives it slightly more range. The difference is definitely not overwhelming, but it should hopefully help players catch up to moving targets. For default knives, the attack speed was slightly increased, and the sprint and ability out times for its wielded melee attacks were reduced. Some weapons have a delay after you use them before you can either start sprinting again or before you can use an ability. Medkits are a pretty good example of this. What this change did was reduce how long before you can start sprinting or using an ability after you take a swing. For power knives, the attack speed was slightly reduced, but the firing delay was reduced as well, and this is the big change. Before this, power knives had a pretty significant delay before you landed your hit on a target. As of this patch, it's very close to instant, and the default knives act very similar. Another change that was made but wasn't listed in the patch notes is that you can now start wielded melee swings from a sprint. That's not the same as swinging while sprinting, because when you start the swing, you'll still slow down to a walk, but you can start the swing out of it instead of having to first slow down to a walk and then take the swing. And I don't think too many people will really notice it, but it does contribute to the overall feeling of responsiveness. That said, how to use wielded knives in this most recent update is very similar to how you used them prior. For the default knives, it's basically the same thing, except that the weapon is more powerful now, and you should be sprinting out of each swing if your target starts to gain distance on you, instead of getting locked into a swinging frenzy that keeps us bogged down. For power knives, instead of trying to time the delay of the swing with the damage that it deals, you basically want to make sure you have your crosshair on the target before you hit the button. At the end of it all, the takeaways here should be that power knives are more acceptable to be used on more loadouts, thanks to the better quick melee, and knives in general are a little bit more deadly, though still very difficult to use. The buffs in particular are less about power scaling and more about making the experience feel less clunky, but you're still going to run into situations where you'll be swinging at someone non-stop and it feels like you're not connecting. That is something that still needs to be polished, and investigating what actually needs to change is still underway, but hopefully this is a step in the right direction. P.S. Try using knives with the new nano armor cloaking. Your survivability goes way up. If this video has been interesting, helpful, or entertaining, please feel free to like, subscribe, tell your friends about the channel, and if you have any thoughts on the new knife adjustments, you can go ahead and leave those in the comments section down below. Also, be sure to check out the related links in the video description. Thanks very much, folks. Wrel signing off.
Spotted a hostile infiltrator. Medic, let me take a look.